now that we have our cleaned up city list, we're going to want to say when we're reviewing this data, I don't want to look at two different Bostons and three different New Yorks. Every time I see that, I want it to either say Boston or New York. So what we're going to do is create a VLOOKUP. So going back to our sheet, we have the market here. I'm going to, again, insert by right-clicking on the column, insert a new column, and I'm going to name this Clean Market. In Clean Market, because I'm going to clean it up so that it's easier. It's either going to say New York or it's going to say Boston, and that's it. So how do I do that? Well, I'll go over to my sheet here, and I'll say, okay, what do I want it to say? Every time I see New York, I want it to say New York, comma, NY. And I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to paste it here. Then for Boston, I'm going to say every time you see Boston, I want to say Boston, comma, MA, here and here. So basically what I'm saying is that anytime you see any of these 5 options, there are only 2 things that I want to see. And I have the same formatting, the city, comma, the state. So when I'm reviewing the data, I can only look at 2 cities instead of 5. Makes it a lot easier for me to filter and look at performance. So I'm going to name this sheet my mapping sheet. I'm going to double click on the sheet name and call it map. The reason I call it map is because you're saying to your VLOOKUP, where am I going to go to find this information? So the mapping sheet is kind of your cheat sheet. It's where you say, this is all the data that I'm looking for. So I can say, if this, then that. We'll go back to our data, and we'll start to type in our VLOOKUP formula. So by hitting the equals, I'm now starting a formula. And if I start typing VLOOKUP, it automatically comes up here. So I'm going to tab to say I want to select that one. Now here's what we're going to do. It gives you the formula here. And I'm going to start by selecting the entire column that I'm looking for. So what I'm saying here is start by looking at any cell in this column. So look at the cell next to it, comma. Now I'm going to go back over to my mapping sheet, and I'm going to select this entire table. So what you're going to do is say, okay, you've looked at that column. Now reference this table. Say column again. And I'm going to say 2. Because what I'm saying is that I want you to pull in data from column number 2. So you want to look for this. And when you see this, pull in this. If I had additional columns, we could say 3, 4, 5, etc. We only have 2 columns in this situation, so we say 2. And then we want to end by saying false. The reason why we say false is you have 2 options here, and that is true or false. If you say false, it means you need to have an exact match. So it has to say New York, it has to say New York City, it has to say Boston for this formula to work. If you don't see that, then this formula doesn't work. It's going to return an error. True means that you're not looking for an exact match. There are very, very few times where you would ever want to use true. And in this situation, we're just going to use false. So no, every time your formula should end with false. However, we're not completely done yet. We need to go back to our chart here. We say A1 through B5, and we need to lock it. So to lock it, we put in a dollar symbol before the number and before the letter. The reason why we're doing that is that what we're going to do is drag this formula down. And so what we're saying is, as we move this formula throughout different cells within our sheet, we want you to always reference these 10 cells here. We don't want this to move around. We only want to look at these 10 cells at any given point. So locking it in ensures that you do that. Once we're done, we press enter, and we come back and we see here's our clean market. It says New York. Now the clean market is New York, comma, NY. So now that we've got that set in the first cell, we can copy it and we can paste it all the way down. So what I'm going to do is use my shortcut again. I'm going to go over to this column, shortcut all the way to the bottom, over 1, Command Shift up. Now I've selected all these empty cells, and I'm going to say paste. Now I have all these cells with my new formula. and you can see it cleanly says either New York or Boston in every situation.